Okay, so he's continuing to give his reasons not to fight. I mean, the second chapter began in such way. But in seventh verse, finally Arjuna could understand that he cannot solve the problem in a sense. He was not willing to fight, but he knew that his duty as a Kshatriya to fight the battle is like it's awaiting him. So he could know this conflict going on. So he surrendered voluntarily. He surrendered to Krishna as his disciple. And 2.11 is where Krishna took that position of the spiritual master and spoke as a spiritual master for the first time here in the Bhagavad Gita. Before that, he was speaking as a friend. So, as soon as he started speaking, he took that position, and therefore he chastised Arjuna that you are speaking like a learned man, but you are actually, foolishly lamenting for what is not worthy for lamentation. And then the first thing that he is telling Arjuna is that we are not this body but the soul, the difference between the body and the soul. So this is continuing, so we'll go to the 17th verse now. 2.17. Do you have it handy, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji.
Can you please read?
Yes, Mataji. Sanskrit also, Mataji.
Yeah, the shloka, word to word meaning, translation, purport.
Okay, Mataji. अविनाशी क्यू तद्विधि येन सर्वमिदं ततं विनश्वम् अव्यव्यास न कश्चित् कर्तुम् अर्हति. Avinasi, imperishable, few but that vidhi, knowing, yena by whom, sarvam all of the body, idam this, tatam pervaded, vinasam destruction, avayasa of the imperishable, ayasa of it, na kaschit, no one, kartam to do, arhati is it. That which pervades the entire body, you should not to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. This verse more clearly explains the real nature of the soul, what is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what is spread all over the body. It is consciousness. Everyone is conscious of the pains and pleasures of the body in part or as a whole. This spreading of consciousness is limited within one's own body. The pains and pleasure of one body are unknown to another. Therefore, each and every body is the embodiment of an individual soul. And the symptom of the soul's presence is perceived as individual consciousness. This soul is described as 1/10,000th part of the upper portion of the hair point in size. The Shvetashvatra Upanishad confirms this. Balaprasthabhagyasa satadha kalpitsyacha bhago jiva sa vijnaya sa ganantya kalpati. When the upper point of a hair is divided into 100 parts and again each of such parts is further divided into 100 parts, each such part is the measurement of the dimension of the spirit. So, similarly, the same version is stated. Isagrastita bhagyasta satamasa satratmaka jiva sukshma swarup yam sankhya hitohi chetana. There are innumerable particles of spiritual atoms, which are measured as 1/10,000th of the upper portion of the hair. Therefore, the individual particle of spirit soul is a spiritual atom smaller than the material atoms, and such atoms are innumerable. This very small spiritual spark is the basic principle of the material body, and the influence of such a spiritual spark is spread all over the body, as the influence of the active principle of some medicine spreads throughout the body. This current of the spirit soul is felt all over the body as consciousness, and that is the proof of the presence of the soul. Any layman can understand that the material body minus consciousness is a dead body, and this consciousness cannot be revived in the body by any means of material administration. Therefore, consciousness is not due to any amount of material combination, but to the spirit soul. In Mukanda Upanishad, the measurement of the atomic spirit soul is further explained. Um, ईश्वर आत्मचेतस विद्यद्वायो यासं पंचप्रधा समीरिष प्रणेश चितं सर्वं मुक्तं प्रजनं यास्मिन् वसुधे विभक्ते एषा आत्मा. The soul is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. This atomic soul is floating in the five kinds of air: pran, apan, yan, sman, and udna. Is situated within the heart and spreads its influence all over the body of the embodied living entities. When the soul is purified from the contamination of the five kinds of material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. The Hatha Yoga system is meant for controlling the five kinds of air, encircling the pure soul by different kinds of sitting postures, not for any material profit, but for liberation of the minute soul from the entanglement of the material atmosphere. So the constitution of the atomic soul is admitted in all Vedic literatures, and it is also factually felt in the practical experience of any sane man. Only the insane man can think of this atomic soul as all-pervading Vishnu Tattva. The influence of the atomic soul can be spread all over a particular body. According to the Mudra Upanishad, this atomic soul is situated in the heart of every living entity, and because the measurement of the atomic soul is beyond the power of appreciation of the material scientists, some of them assert foolishly that there is no soul. The individual atomic soul is definitely there in the heart along with the super soul, and thus all the energies of bodily movement are emanating from this part of the body. The corpuscles which carry the oxygen from the lungs gather energy from the soul. And when the soul passes away from this position, the activity of the blood generating fusion ceases. Medical science accepts the importance of the red corpuscles, but it cannot ascertain that the source of the energy is the soul. Medical science, however, does admit that the heart is the seat of all energies of the body. Such atomic particles of the spirit whole are compared to the sunshine molecules. In the sunshine, there are innumerable radiant molecules. Similarly, the fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord are atomic sparks of the rays of the Supreme Lord, called by the name Prabha or superior energy. So, whether one follows Vedic knowledge or modern science, one cannot deny the existence of the spirit soul in the body, and the science of the soul is explicitly described in the Bhagavad Gita by the personality of God himself.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji. It was a long purport, and so many shlokas were there in that purport. So it compensated for your, other classes. So thank you so much. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Translation, that which pervades. So here Krishna is giving in detail characteristics of the soul, and how it's different from our material body. So that which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. So soul is imperishable. Nobody can kill or destroy it. And it pervades the entire body. So Prabhupada is giving in details What does it exactly mean? This verse more clearly explains the real nature of the soul, which is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what is spread all over the body. It is consciousness. Now, if I pinch you on your hand or somewhere, so you will feel that pain. You can know. Or if a mosquito is sitting, then you can feel, okay, there is something, and try to put it away. But if I pinch, if a dead body is there and I pinch the dead body, or I hit the dead body, that the dead body is not going to react. Why? Something is absent in that dead body, and that is what consciousness. Living entity is conscious, whereas a dead body is not conscious. So everyone is conscious of the pains and pleasures of the body in part or as a whole. This spreading of consciousness is limited within one's own body. So, first thing we understood is, now the living entity, the difference between the living entity and a dead body is is the consciousness. Dead body is not conscious, whereas living entity is conscious. So what is this consciousness? It is a symptom of the presence of the soul, because the soul is present in the living entity. So we are conscious. Now if now the dead body, something is missing in that, that's why it starts decomposing and all these things. So that's the soul. That missing thing is the soul. So because of the absence of the soul, there is no consciousness there. And the other thing is, now a particular living entity is conscious of one's own body. If if I get hurt somewhere, then I can feel the pain and pleasure pertaining to my body. I cannot feel the pain and pleasure pertaining to your body or somebody else's body. So our this consciousness is limited to our own bodies, whatever we have. The pains and pleasures of one body are unknown to another. Therefore, each and every body is the embodiment of an individual soul, and the symptom of the soul's presence is perceived as individual consciousness. This soul is described as, okay, now what is the size of the soul? That also is given in our scriptures. What is the size of the soul? It is described as 1/10,000 part of the upper portion. Now if you just hold the hair in your hand, and you can just notice its tip of the hair. If you divide that tip of the hair, cut it into 100 pieces, 100 parts, and then again each part, take one part and just make it like 100 more parts. So that is the size of the soul. So it is 1 by 10,000 part of the tip of the hair. Now Prabhupada has quoted. Now if you notice in purports, Srila Prabhupada never just says anything just out of nowhere. So he always quotes from he gives evidence from the scriptures. So here he quotes from the Svetashvata Upanishad. When the upper portion of the when the upper portion of a hair is divided into 100 parts, and again each of such part is further divided into 100 parts, each such part is the measurement of the dimension of the spirit soul. Similarly, there is another verse about Keshagra Shata Bhagasya. So there are innumerable particles of spiritual atoms which are measured as 1/10,000th of the upper portion of the hair. Therefore, the individual particle of spirit soul is a spiritual atom smaller than the material atoms. So atoms, and in science we used to study, neutrons, protons and all that. So now there are electron microscopes. I don't know if there is something beyond that, but we had studied in our school time electron microscope to see very minute microbes and all that. But there is no such instrument which can measure the dimensions of a which can by which we can actually see the soul. There is no such material instrument. And So the individual particle of spirit soul is a spiritual atom smaller than the material atoms, and such atoms are innumerable. This very small spiritual spark is the basic principle of the material body, and the influence of such a spiritual spark is spread all over the body as the influence of the active breath. So we can understand this spiritual, it's so minute, but just because of its presence we are able to do so many activities. If that spiritual spark leaves our body, then we will be considered a dead body. Such spread all over the body as the influence of the active principle of some medicine spreads throughout the body. Now if if I have some disease or something, and doctor prescribe, if I have some body pain for example, and doctor prescribes me some medicine, so when I take that medicine, the influence of that medicine will work according to the whatever the medicine is, it will work accordingly. So that influence will spread all over the body, or whichever part of the body it is supposed to work upon. So in the same way, our the spirit soul, its influence is spread all over the body, and that's how and that is manifested in form of consciousness. This current of the spirit soul is felt all over the body as consciousness, and that is the proof of the presence of the soul. Any layman can understand that the material body minus consciousness is a dead body, and this consciousness cannot be revived in the body by any means of. Now, some so-called scientists claim that we can create life in the laboratories, but it is Prabhupada boldly challenges also, and there's a book also like that to refute the argument of the so-called scientists that life has come from matter. So there's a book, Life Comes from Life. So it's a conversation of Sri Prabhupada with one of his disciples, Swarup Damodar Goswami, I think. So it is not feasible that if the scientists take all the chemicals and everything, that is constituting our material body, and work upon it in the laboratory, and bring those material elements into life. So it is not feasible, it's not possible. Why? Because the element which is actually responsible for distinguishing between a living and a dead body is the spirit soul, and it is not something material, it is spiritual. So any layman can understand the material body minus consciousness is dead body, and this consciousness cannot be revived in the body by any means of material administration. Then the scientists would have conquered over death. But no, what they may make so many medicines and so many things, but you can't stop death. So by material means we can't bring a dead body to life. Therefore, consciousness is not due to any amount of material combination but to the spirit soul. So this consciousness is because of the presence of the spiritual spark, and it is not because of some chemical compositions, chemical combinations or so. In the Mundaka Upanishad, the measurement of again Srila Prabhupada quotes from scriptures, the soul is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. This atomic soul is floating in the 5 kinds of air, prana, apana, vyana, samana and udana, is situated within the heart. So it is present, the soul is present in the location of the heart, and spreads its influence all over the body of the embodied living entities. When the soul is purified from the contamination of 5 kinds of material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. So presently the soul is like in our conditioned state, the atomic soul is like just like a seed. A small seed has a whole tree within it. When the seed is sown in proper soil, and it is provided with water and everything, it gradually grows and becomes a huge tree. Similarly, that atomic spiritual spark is in a unmanifested or in a dormant state. Why? Because we are identifying ourselves with this material body. at present. So it's in a kind of a dormant state. But when we are purified of this material consciousness, then the actual our spiritual, our actual consciousness as parts and parcels of Krishna, that thing becomes manifest. The Hatha Yoga system is meant for controlling the 5 kinds of fare, encircling the pure soul by different kinds of sitting postures. So there are different yoga systems. So one of them is the yogis who try to control their breathing, restrain their breathing, their exhalation and inhalation, and by control of the breath they control the mind, and therefore kind of purification, so that they can go to the higher platform of understanding the soul and all, by different kinds of sitting postures, not for any material profit but for liberation of the minute soul from the entanglement of the material atmosphere. So, the constitution of the atomic soul is admitted in all Vedic literatures, and it is also actually felt in the practical experience of any sane man. Only the insane man can think of this atomic soul as, yeah. So it's very practical that a dead body and a living body, so difference we can understand. So because of something is there which is missing in the dead body, and that we can understand from scriptures, it's a spiritual the spirit soul. Now the other point that Prabhupada is mentioning is that that atomic soul is not same as the super soul, or is not same as Vishnu Tattva. It's different. Only the insane man can think of this atomic soul as all pervading Vishnu Tattva. There's a difference, because the super soul knows about everyone, like, but the soul's consciousness is limited to one's own body, but the super soul knows about all living entities, all bodies and everything. The influence of the atomic soul can be spread all over a particular body. According to Mundaka Upanishad, this atomic soul is situated in the heart of every living entity, and because the measurement of the atomic soul is beyond the power of appreciation of material scientists, because by material instruments they cannot measure the dimensions of the soul. Some of them assert foolishly that there is no soul. So this is a very foolish conclusion, because even we cannot see the air, but we can feel and we can know about, okay, there is air from different perspectives. It's not necessary to see to understand that something exists. Even if there's no air, then how am I able to breathe? How am I feel different things, or smell different fragrance and so on. So in the same way, the proof of the existence of the soul or the spirit soul in us is a consciousness. But some foolish scientists may not accept it. The individual atomic soul is definitely there in the heart along with the super soul, and thus all the energies. Now we understand from so-called modern scientific science point of view, that the heart is the center of is like pumping of the blood and everything, is it's because of the heart. So it's the most important part in our body. But from where does the heart gets that energy, or to it doesn't stop, the heartbeat doesn't stop even for a moment. If it stops, then okay, the person is dead. So all throughout the life the heart beats. And so what is the source of energy for the heart? We never question that, but we get answer to this in the scriptures. The individual atomic soul is definitely there in the heart along with the super soul, and thus all energies of bodily movement are emanating from this part of the body. So it's because of the presence of the soul and the super soul in this position of the heart, that because of them the heart is getting the energy. The corpuscles which carry the oxygen from the lungs gather energy from the soul. When the soul passes away from this position, the activity of the blood generating fusion ceases. So everything, the body is just a waste once the soul leaves the body. Medical science accepts the importance of the red corpuscles, but it cannot ascertain that the source of the energy is the soul. Medical science, however, does admit that the heart is the seat of all energies of the body, but they cannot understand beyond that there is the spirit soul, which is the source of energy for the heart. Such atomic particles of the spirit whole are compared to the sunshine molecules. In the sunshine, there are innumerable radiant molecules. Similarly, the fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord are atomic sparks of the rays of the Supreme Lord, called by the name Prabha or superior energy. So, whether one follows Vedic knowledge or modern science, one cannot deny the existence of the spirit soul in the body, and the science of the soul is explicitly described in the Bhagavad Gita by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. So, whether one tries to study about it from the logic point of view or from the scriptures, we come to the same conclusion that there is a spirit soul, because of which a person is actually living. Without the presence of the spirit soul, a person is dead. So, and we understand that these spirit souls are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, the fragmental parts of that supreme whole or that supreme Lord. Just like there is the sun and there is sunshine. The sunshine molecules, they are like the living entities, and the sun is like the uh, Supreme Lord. So we are all being emanated from the Supreme Lord, and that's why we are all fragments of that supreme whole. Okay, so this was yeah, it was a nice verse. Okay, I will stop here. If you have any points to add, Mataji, then you can please go ahead, or if anything to discuss regarding this particular verse. Okay. Okay, so I have a question then. How do you justify heart transplantation? Like heart transplant happens, no? So, is it the same soul, or when a new heart is the transplant happens and a person gets a new heart, is the soul different, or how do you justify this heart transplant in a person?
Normally, after the heart transplant, the person wakes up the same, as in he remembers his name and family members and who is he and everything. So, soul is the same, but what happens, that I have no idea.
Okay, thank you so much, Majaji. So, yes, the soul is same. Um, why I asked is, sometimes we are confused that the soul is present in the heart. So if the heart is, when at the time of heart transplantation, a new heart is put in the body of a patient. So the soul is, it's different. So it's not so. The soul, super soul, they are present in the position of the heart. So it's like, if I'm using a particular chair and the chair is broken, so I replace it with a new chair. So I'm the same person still there, or just I replace my sitting place, a new chair. So in the same way, the soul is there, but room for the soul, for example, or the seat for the soul, that is the heart. So that is just the material organ, so that is changed, so the soul remains same. So this was sometimes this point, this confusion comes. That's why I brought out this point, because the soul is present in the position of the heart, it's not present in the heart. So when the heart is changed, then or heart transplant happens, so the soul just takes on a new seat or a new heart. So yes. Okay, anything else? I think otherwise we'll close, we'll not go further, just close here. If nothing, then we'll close. I think now you will be available for start meeting classes also. Will you be available? Okay, that's great. So we'll meet you in the start meeting classes at 5:45. It will start. Before that, you can join for the Aarti over there. So thank you so much, Mataji, for joining. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandat Pranam.